this for our directors as well. Um, I'm going to probably write to the directors and say we need to, maybe at the top of every 5 month session, we need to explain the warm ups again. Because new people come on board and they don't hear about that. So like they don't hear why we stretch and why we do these particular three songs. One person mentioned that when we do the Every Little Cell in My Body, she feels like she's at summer camp. Well, you know what? Blue Skies is kind of a summer camp. And, oh God, what's his name? He wrote a big hit for Anne Murray. Anyway, he's there every year, and that's how he warms up the sing-along crowd, is with that very song. I just, you can't help but feel a little more cheerful when you sing a song about how every little cell in your body is happy. Donna, you're waving? Yep.
You know what I think is interesting? If you listen to the choir as they're doing the O Namah Shiva, it's almost like a guitarist tuning his guitar, because you can start to hear when everybody becomes one, there's like this disjointed bit, and then all of a sudden, the whole choir is kind of singing together. But it's almost like you're tuning us up with that one, and you're making us kind of listen and pay attention. Yep. I close my eyes and yeah.
I think we need to start doing that a little more often as well. Turn out the lights in the room and relax. I used to get everybody to point their toes inward a little bit, drop their hands to their sides, and make them point to the floor, and just to drop the shoulders and relax. And then we would stretch, and then we would do the Om Namah Shiva while everybody's eyes were closed. Because when your eyes are closed, you don't have the distraction about what's going on in the room. You can then feel better what's going on in your body as you start to breathe a little more easily and you feel more relaxed. And I used to do a song back in the day when I played in a duo with another woman from a group called This Mortal Coil. And it was a female take on Jeff Buckley's song To the Siren. I changed it around and called it the Song of the Siren. And it was one of those tunes where if I closed my eyes and there was this washy background going on, I could go so deeply into a different space where all I was a channel for the voice, that I'd come out of it and think, I'd have to look around and go, where am I? Okay, yeah, all right. I'm here at this particular club, right? And that's the whole point of trying to just block out everything else that's going on and be the voice, as opposed to standing there worrying about the woman standing next to you, whether she just heard you sing a flat note or anything like that. We should not be worrying about that at all. Like I mentioned in the technique workshop, I'd have to go and look for these statistics, but I remember reading or hearing somewhere once that 35% of singers will sing slightly sharp or slightly flat. But 65% of listeners can't tell. And there are only 3% of singers out there who are technically tone deaf. And what it means to be tone deaf is if I sing two different notes to you, you can't tell if one's higher or lower than the one I just sang, right? And they would be quite disparate notes. It wouldn't be like I'd go, and then, right? That's too close. But if you go, and then, and if the person listening can't tell if that's two different notes, then they're literally tone deaf. But only 3% of the human population is actually tone deaf. So I maintain that everybody's got the right raw materials. And through even just weekly practice at choir, every week, I've had so many members tell me that even just coming once a week, they found that their range has increased. It's weekly exercise, right? Your range will increase the more you practice. So anyway, the Om Namah Shiva, that's been with me since I started teaching private vocal lessons back in the 90s. So it's not going anywhere. I like it to be that kind of a warm up where you come to and go, oh man, am I ever relaxed, right? Now the morning song from Zimbabwe too, an it's a call and response exercise that's meant to distract you from thinking about what these words are and just repeating the sound back. And that prepares you for running phrasing together and stuff where you might be asked now in some song to put 3 syllables in the word and right, because that's how the phrasing was written. So that too, it's encouraging you to just respond quickly without mentally taking it all apart, because we have a tendency to do that too much, like looking at the words and seeing how they fit with the notes. And I remember early, back within the first few years of choir, I encouraged everybody to put like arrows and notes on their own lyrics to help them get through. Like, and Donna was saying that she used to do that too. People would look over her shoulder and stuff. At one point, I think it was with Jan Arden's Good Mother, I actually wrote the lyrics out so that they climbed and dipped. And that took hours and hours and hours. And I thought, you know what? This is not my work. This is somebody else can do this if they want. But anyway, so morning songs from Zimbabwe too. It's in a comfortable part of our range. Sorry, it's not in a comfortable part of the soprano range. And I will never, ever stop apologizing to the sopranos. And then Every Little Cell. I mean, we could do Don't Worry, Be Happy or some other song like that. But the point is, again, I don't have the time to go out looking for replacements all the time when I've got 2 songs on the drawing board right now that I would dearly love to get at. One of them is a Matt Anderson song called Drift Away. Beautiful song. He's a great songwriter. And I've got Angel from Montgomery. I haven't even been able to map out the parts for that one yet. So I have one more workshop next week, and then I can get back to doing new songs. And hopefully in September we'll figure out some kind of way to work all this out. I know that they keep saying, groups of 100 and so on, but they keep saying, but no singing. No singing. What do you mean, no singing? Okay, Joanne, where are you, Joanne? You're saying you can't hear. Oh, there you are. Can you hold your space bar down and can you hear us, Joanne?
Yes, I can now. Sorry,
Oh,
that was just at
no
the
problem.
beginning.
Yeah,
I'm fine.
I tend to forget to look at the chats, and sometimes there's something important being said.
Yeah, no,
All
I'm
right.
fine. Thank you.
Okay, so that gets us through the warm-up. Someone else pointed out to me that I always use the metaphor of, if you're going to go out for a run, you wouldn't think of doing it without first stretching out your legs. Well, someone has pointed out to me that the latest wisdom in the athletic world is that you don't need to stretch to warm up. So, okay, I'll dump that metaphor now and just plainly say that my massage therapist is constantly giving me stretching exercises to do, because when you're in chronic pain, you get anxious. And when you're anxious, your muscles tighten up. And so if you go and try to sing without first stretching out your neck and shoulder muscles, because God knows we're all living under all kinds of stress, especially through COVID, right? But with my chronic back problems, I'm constantly favoring one leg over another or sitting badly because, like when I go to bed at night, I find the one position that doesn't hurt and I fall asleep. I wake up the next morning pretty much in the same position and my body has seized overnight. So I must stretch before I get out of bed. So anyway, I'll drop that metaphor about running. Although I don't think I know a runner who wouldn't go and stretch out her calves before going for a jog. But anyway, so So this stretching and so on, I think it's time to maybe remind the directors why, what happens when we turn the chin down and go from side to side and then do this. Oh, this was the other thing. When we get sick, our lymph nodes here tend to fill up and get hard and painful. This thing not only gets your saliva going, but it also, if there's any infection lurking in those lymph nodes, it pushes that out into your bloodstream. So the whole body is the immune system, right? Most of our immune system actually lives in our gut, not in our lymph nodes, but the lymph nodes are all part of the immune system. So if you push any infection out into your bloodstream, it will be dealt with a lot more quickly than if you let it pile up in there and make that really, really painful. Okay, so now, why these particular songs? You'll notice that an awful lot of them are older songs that, and of course, I'm an old hippie, so peace, love, and understanding, thank you very much. And the odd good time thrown in here. I find it remarkable, maybe not so remarkable, that so many of these peace, love, and understanding songs apply today as equally as they did back in the 60s and 70s. That is so disheartening sometimes, but I tend to think of Shout Sister as a peace choir more than a women's community choir. When I first started this choir, within the first couple of weeks of trying to figure out how to do it, I heard on the CBC that there had been an international peace conference in Victoria and that they had had an enormous peace choir perform. And I thought, I want to do that. I want to get invited to fly somewhere around the world with an enormous peace choir and sing at an event like this. So I'm not giving up hope on that, right? We already didn't get invited to the sesquicentennial, and I think in order to keep me quiet, I kept pestering them saying, I can bring 150 women, I can, from all over my choirs, I can bring 150 women to Ottawa to sing at the events. So instead they gave me an invitation to have dinner with Prince Charles. It happened on the same day. Anyway. So the other thing that I've noticed lately too is that a lot of contemporary music seems to be limited to like 3 or 4 notes. The verse is 3 or 4 notes in a line, repeated 4 or 6 times, and then they go to a chorus, which is another 3 or 4 notes repeated, and I don't know, some people say Sesame Street is to blame for this. Songs that are now sound bites as opposed to melodies. When I go looking for a song, one of the first things that has to strike my ear is, what's the melody like? I quite often get requests from choir members to do that Sister Sledge song, right? We are family. I've got all my sisters with me. Okay. And I ask those people, have you listened to the verses? Nobody listens to the verses. The verses are boring. But we all want to chant that anthem, and it's great. If only whoever had written the song had taken the time to make verses that were equally anthemic. So when I find songs that have wonderful melodies, like this year, I added a song that was written in the 40s that Mama Cass recorded, right? Dream a Little Dream of Me. Stars shining bright above you. Night breezes seem to whisper, I love you. Birds singing in the sycamore tree. Listen to all those notes, right? Your brain, yeah. Dream a little dream. And then a bridge that goes, stars fading, but I linger on, dear. Like, that is an amazing melody line. And so your brain has to work really hard to put all of that together and get it right. And so that encourages listening, which is what being a good singer is all about, being able to listen first. I chuckle when I think of when I first brought out Hallelujah, because I said to all three of my choirs, now just listen, because here's my arrangement. And I pushed play, and immediately everybody started singing along. So nobody heard the arrangement at all until they got it home, which is, it's okay. But the point being, you need to listen in order to get all these things. So I mentioned that in, yeah, Birgit, yeah. Maybe the Prince can invite us to an international peace conference. Yeah, I'll write him a letter. I'm now there's a word for us who've been given GG awards, right? I don't know what it is, but anyway. Finding something that has a great melody line is tantamount to me, because otherwise it's boring. There is a distinction, like in blues music, for example, you get the same line repeated a few times with, like, it's an A, B, A rhyme or whatever, right? But the point there being, and I always listen when I hear a song that has a repetitive melody, because my assumption is that the message of the lyrics is more important than the melody. It used to be that they were always done together. And I mean, Dream a Little Dream of Me isn't necessarily a socially relevant song. It's a love song. But that, again, that has a lot to do with why what we get in pop music tends to be love songs. When I was at university, I studied cultural anthropology, and I wrote a lot of papers on blues music and how historically what happens is, like, blues came out right around the time of emancipation, where black musicians, itinerant musicians, would go around and they would play, and they'd steal each other's songs and add to them, adjust them, whatever. But they were telling stories of abuse, of disease, of floods, of racism, of you name it, right? Blues, when it started out, was a completely genre of music that was social commentary. And then so was jazz. And then when I heard rap music at first, I thought, oh, here's the next social genre coming out. This is the next way in which oppressed people can find an art form to express what's going on in their worlds. And every time white music starts to get in there and co-opt it, it ends up getting softened just a little bit. Pop music now is all about love songs, etc. What happened in blues music is there was a preponderance of guitar players who weren't necessarily singers, but they were writing all these mean woman blues. You know, my baby left me, and boom, 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 I'm going to shoot you right down, and evil-hearted woman, and listen to some of the Rolling Stones lyrics. I like their rock and roll, but some of their lyrics really piss me off. Anyway, so, and now rap music too, it's, that's a really good example of how there's a repetitive melody going on in the background, a beat as they call it, right? You're not meant to pay attention to that because your ear is supposed to be paying attention to the poetry. So I make this distinction now that rap music isn't music, it's poetry set to a beat. Joni Mitchell is another favorite example of mine. She's written an amazing amount of fabulous music, but she's only written a handful of songs. A song, in my mind, is something that has a chorus, a verse, a chorus, a bridge, and something that makes you want to sing along, so a universal aspect to it. And Joni has said, I always tried to add something of the universal in the songs that I write. And that's what makes them attractive to us, because we can identify with whatever the sentiment is. Like in the rhythm workshop, I pointed out that her song River actually feels like you're skating, right? It's coming on Christmas. They're cutting down trees, putting up rain. You just feel like you're gliding across the ice. And so many songs, the ones that work, the ones that become hits out there, they work because those lyrics fit with the rhythm of the song and the melodic structure. You couldn't write an angry song and put it to a pretty melody. It just would not make sense, right? And my favorite bone to pick this past year has been that wonderful song by Jason Mraz, I'm Yours, right? Well, you done me and you bet I felt it. I tried to be chill, but you're so hot that I melted. I fell right through the cracks. Well, he says that song just basically fell into his lap, and I understand that because I had a song fall into my lap once too, and I spent years looking up at the sky saying, can you do that again? Because it's hard work, right? But he gets to this line, and he writes this line, and it's our God-forsaken right to be loved, loved, loved. I'm thinking, what do you mean God-forsaken? I think that's the wrong scan. You should have spent another couple of hours finding something that doesn't say that, because it just doesn't make sense, syntactically or grammatically or whatever, right? Anyway, but for the most part, that is a hell of a fun song to sing. So I ignore that line and I sing it anyway, right? And back in the early days too, when we were all doing Imagine, I remember explaining to my choirs that being the feminist that I am, you'll notice that I do change lyrics once in a while to make them more inclusive. This year I did Oscar Peterson's Hymn to Freedom, and he writes about when every man joins every man, blah, 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 man, man, man. So I thought, well, why wouldn't you say when everyone joins in our song? So I changed it. And I figure Oscar Peterson probably would not have a problem with that. And if his copyright company wants to sue me for it, let him try. Anyway, when we started doing Imagine, I remember telling the choirs that when we get to the line Brotherhood of Man, I don't say, Brotherhood of Man, I sing or, because that changes the whole meaning of the phrase. If we actually live in a world that is equal, where no one is oppressed and marginalized and so on, we don't need a brotherhood of man. So when you say or, it means that we don't need this, or a brotherhood of man. So anyway, that's my rationale for doing that. There are so many wonderful songs out there that we can pull into our rotations, like Lean on Me, great example, right? There's so many songs out there that don't mention any kind of gender, which I also go for, because I think, I'm not sure whether it says in our, welcome to Shout Sister thing, but when I look for music, I never assume that we are all white, Christian, straight. I think those are the main three, right? I look for that. I don't want any song to just assume that we're all heterosexual or that we're all white or Christian. So this is why we don't do religious material, although I will use the word Lord or God in there because everybody says it. It's not necessarily a religious reference. But we don't do religious material, and I struggled for a long time with wanting very much to do a Black Baptist choral, a different choir that just does all that amazing Black Baptist gospel music, because that genre of music is all about freedom and freedom from oppression and equality. But I thought, I probably would end up having to explain over and over again, no, we're not going to go raise money for this, that, and the other church. It's not a religious thing. So I have to straddle that line. At one point, I lost a couple of members because I chose Ry Cooder's version of Jesus on the Main Line to try to get people to sing in kind of that Salvation Army style with a great big bass drum, right? And because his arrangement of that is really, really cool. And it makes you want to dance and move to the music, right? But of course, it's about Jesus being on the main line, tell him what you want. So, okay, that went too far, that's fine, I won't go there again, right? And we did have one instance when I had Decker, when I was doing the Etta James stuff, where I was doing a gospel medley at the end of the show, and I had a member in the choir who raised her fist every time I said the word Jesus. And I thought, uh-oh. Anyway, so I try to avoid those kinds of problems. So I try to find music that is as inclusive as possible. And then I take it from there. The next thing I do is, like, I tried doing Simon and Garfunkel, some of their stuff. Their stuff is virtually impossible to put 3 voices behind because their harmony style was so different. Everly Brothers is a little different because their stuff is Appalachian style and sort of very bluegrass, so you can quite often make 3 parts out of it. But generally I look for a good triad, I hate to use technical terms, but 3 notes that go together really well throughout the whole song. And there will always be, not always, but quite often there will be a spot in the song where I can't make those 3 parts work with the lyrics. So then I give the highs and lows some oohs to do to smooth that over. Because if the notes are going to start stepping on one another, then it's too difficult. And then because I'm such a big fan of call and response gospel style and blues style, I love hearing, I mean, that's what the Indigo Girls were all about too, right? Singing 2 different sets of lyrics over top of one another and having it blend together so well. I remember when I lived in London, I used to play with a guy named Larry Smith often enough. And we used to do this duet. He would sing, just be sure when you say, I love you, it's a sin to tell a lie, right? And over top of that, I would go, I'm gonna sit right down and write myself a letter and make believe it came from you. And they worked beautifully together, right? So that kind of stuff is fun to do. So I'm thinking we should just maybe look at this list that I sent out and talk about how some of these songs are a little different from one another. Like Almost Home, I think, is the first anthemic tune that we have adopted as a Shout Sister signature song, right? Nobody ever gets tired of that song. And, I mean, but there's all that going on. There's harmony, and there's responses and stuff. But there's this really cool melody, right? I saw my life this morning, lying at the bottom of a drawer. But there's that repetition coming in the next 2 lines. All this junk, all this stuff that I've been saving, God knows what this junk is for. So that's 4 lines that repeat themselves. But and whatever I believe in, and this is all I have to show. There, the melody departs into something that stifles the boredom, right? It just pushes the boredom out of the way, and it raises the mood, right? Because suddenly you're more assertive. Whatever I believed in, this is all I have to show. What the hell were all the reasons for holding on for such? I see, Thelma and Louise driving in a convertible, not necessarily over the cliff, but I see, somebody in a car with the top down, blasting through the desert saying, I'm out of here. I've had enough of hanging on to painful memories and old stuff, photographs and so on. Lots of metaphors in that song. That the thing that I think happens to us subconsciously is it speaks to our experience somehow or other. when I first moved to London, Ontario, my neighbor, a couple of doors down, she came and introduced herself to me. She said, I noticed you let your kids go to school with their pants on backwards and wearing two different socks. I said, yeah, while they're dressing themselves, they get an extra cup of coffee. So her kids started going to school with his pants on backwards. And she would come for coffee, and she learned that I was a professional musician. And she asked me if I knew her favorite song, which was The Ballad of Lucy Jordan, which is the theme song for Thelma and Louise, right? And I said, no, I've never sung it, but I love Shel Silverstein's music, so yeah, maybe I'll learn that for you. I couldn't take that song out in front of anybody for several months because the chorus of that song, at the age of 37, she realized she'd never ride through Paris in a sports car with the warm wind in her hair. I was 37 years old. I had a baby at the breast, one in junior K and one in grade 1. He was taking the car to work every day. I'm stuck in, suburbia circa 19, I don't know, brick houses with brass numbers. All the houses look the same kind of thing, but an old neighborhood. And I felt like the literary metaphor of the trapped woman looking out the window longingly, thinking, where did my life go, right? So what I did with that song was I made myself sing it every day until I broke down and sobbed for a little while, until it got to the point where I didn't cry quite so much. And then I could still put some real emotion behind those lyrics without falling apart myself. And that's where you want to take a song, and I've explained to a lot of students over the years that this is not an infinite space. We tend to push so much into whatever nook and cranny we can find so that we don't have to deal with it. If you sing a song that has an angry edge to it, and you allow yourself to express, just let a little bit of that out, every time you do, you relieve that pressure. The same with sadness, and nobody ever stores up happiness. That just doesn't happen. We sing happy songs because they make us feel happy. But we tend to repress. Are you waving at me, Pam? Did you want to say something? Got your space bar?
Yeah. No, what I wanted to say about this song, and you just touched on it, is when I first heard this song, and I hadn't heard it until you brought it to choir, it was almost like it gives everybody permission to be angry about something they had before, but in their own situation.
Yeah.
So it was very comforting, actually.
Exactly. Yeah, that's that universality that a message in a song that might not relate specifically to your current situation, but there's something in it. Like Pam said, you give yourself permission to feel just a little bit pissed off about something that happened years ago. I wrote a song on my first album called The Exile, and I wrote it because one of the guys in the trio that I was playing in was, he had just come out of a 5-year relationship with a woman, had immediately dived into something with someone who was 15 years his junior. That didn't work. And he had just embarked on a new relationship. And they're still together 20 years later, so that's good. It worked. But he was sitting behind me, and I overheard him say to somebody at the table, yeah, I really wish I could just go back to Paris. So by the time I went to bed that night, I had this melody going in my head. So you want to go to Paris, hang out on the banks of the Seine. Because I lived in France, there's a whole lot of French music in my head. So I was able to come up immediately with a melody that evokes a Parisian accordion and a beret and stuff, right? But then I sat down and by the time I went to bed, I had a few more lines, about, I had the hook, which I figured was the song, was the brand nouveau. Like you hear terms like nouveau riche, right? So this is the brand nouveau gone. Big. And then I realized at one point I kept putting the song away because I thought, well, this is personal. I'm making a comment on this friend of mine's life. So I tried not to write it, and every time I went to sit down to write something else, this song would scream at me, finish me. So it took me quite a while, and when I got it done, I thought, wait a second, this isn't about him. This is about me and anybody else who, when they come up to a problem that they can't solve or some kind of hurt, we just want to run away. We want to go somewhere else and start all over. And then we figure, okay, well, I got to go back and resolve this, do some reconciliation of some sort. And we go back and we find that things are changed. The problem hasn't left, but there's a whole new different set of circumstances to deal with. And so I ended up writing to him and saying, I started to write this song thinking it was about you, but it turns out it's not about you. It's about everybody who does this. And I said, but I still, because I started out writing it about you, I wanted to get, your yay or nay as to whether or not I should go ahead and record it. And he wrote back, he said, thank you for writing such a beautiful song underlined about me, right? So he saw the universality in that song. So that meant a lot to me. Another example I would give you is also on the first album, I recorded a song by Rory Block called Love and Whiskey, which deals with...
I love that song.
Thank you. It deals with what alcohol does to relationships, right? The devastation. And for years, I would do music festivals, and I would play that song in workshops. And men would come up to me after the workshop was over with tears, saying, you just sang my life. And it feels so good to know that you can touch someone in that way. The other one is, you're going to find this terribly weird, but when my first child was born, I'd never sung a lullaby in my life. I'm a rock and roll and blues singer, right? So the only song I could think of as a gentle go-to-sleep song was Tom Waits's On the Nickel. Now, if you look at those lyrics, that song was written about Skid Row in L.A. But it's, sticks and stones may break my bones, but I always will be true. When your daddy's dead and gone, I'll sing this lullaby just for you. And I would just say, okay, he doesn't understand English yet. He's not talking, right? And that was still the only lullaby I sang to my children for a very long time. It's a beautiful song. And I leave it up to them to someday parse it and figure out what it's all about. So again, pleasing melodies. We do the, what's her name? Connie Calder's Prairie Lullaby. A beautiful song, right? And that all comes because one of the things that I'm trying to do too is amass as much Canadian material as I can, because we have some of the most amazing songwriters that are still, they're not on the A-list because they're not doing, what I call pap songs instead of pop songs. They're not doing the obligatory love songs or You Hurt Me. Like, I remember when Adele first exploded onto the scene, so many people were so in love with Rolling in the Deep and some of those hits that she had, but they weren't really looking at the song and realizing that everything that Adele was writing was about, aren't you sorry now that you dumped me? That doesn't apply to a lot of us. I would just assume, And so I found too that Joni Mitchell is credited with creating what we call the confessional genre, where we talk about our own personal experiences. So Sarah McLachlan carries it on, and those kinds of songwriters. And not all of those songs feel like they apply to all of us. But if they can write a line or two in there that does connect with something. I mean, I don't know anybody who doesn't know the song Arms of the Angel. So that's something in there. It's implicit in the lyrics. Whether that song is about dying from disease or suicide, whatever it's about, it calls to something in our brains. And so our brains latch onto it. So there's a whole lot of stuff out there that we aren't able to sing along to because it just, this past, or 2 years ago, for me, it was the Traveling Wilburys' End of the Line. There's no story in that song. It's a whole group of rhymes, and it's a very clever song. But I could not commit it to memory. It took me the whole year to get it right. because they're just, for me, there's no flow. People used to be amazed because I could do Ricky Lee Jones's hit Danny's All-Star Joint, because that's a very long song and has a lot of words, but it tells a story, and each line then triggers the next one in your brain. And I've mentioned this in the technical workshop too, that with my 3 choirs anymore, I don't even bother to say, okay, let's go back and listen to the start notes, unless it's a new song, because you guys are so attuned now to learning by ear that you hear the first note of the tracks. You don't need to hear your notes. Your brain knows where your note is. It's called relative pitch. And so I think we could actually do away with some of those start notes, but they're on the tracks now, so we leave them. And in a performance situation, everybody feels a little more secure if they get that note first, right? Especially for those of you who are coming in with a response and you're waiting, or your ooh starts later or something like that. You want that note in there so that you know where you are when it comes to that. So I try also to not to spend, like in the first few years there were a lot of ballads. And my reasoning for that is that when you sing a ballad, you literally have to hold on to notes longer than when you're singing something like me and Julio down bad school young. Right? When the words come at you quickly and the melody is quick and brisk, you're just spitting those notes out, and it's wonderful because it's percussive. But when you're singing the water is wide, right? You have to hold on, you have to learn how to hold on to that without your voice going, right? You have to, and the only way you can do that is with your body, figuring that out, right? I've explained that when you hold an ooh for a long time, your body should be freezing, not tense, but you just stand very, very still and hold that aperture steady. You don't move your tongue around inside your mouth. You don't do anything with your lips. You go, ooh. And there's me using my shoulder because I'm trying to play with the amount of vibrato that comes from in many cases, a lot of us will have a vibrato. Unless you grow up in, say, Appalachia, where bluegrass musicians, if you listen to somebody like Alison Krauss or even Emmylou Harris, there's no vibrato there. Their voices, even though Emmylou's is now rough, there's no vibrato in it. It's like crystal. And that's a cultural thing. It's like one of my my early students, a Mohawk woman, who had asked me to try to train the vibrato out of her voice, because that's something you grow up with in that culture, is a lot of vibrato in order to make the sounds that they make in their songs. If you've ever listened to the Hungarian, any Hungarian choir, but my favorite example is the Hungarian Women's Choir, they make sounds that, unless you learn them in infancy, we can't do. It's kind of like learning a language. If you learn a second language before the age of, I think it's 7, they say, then you'll always be able to replicate sounds. But this is why I've put, pen in there, because I'm thinking we need to try to look at lyrics as more than just words, but as sounds that we can create. So that and the one in Gaelic. Have you all done the one in Gaelic yet? Yeah, it's a bit of a challenge, right? Yeah. And so that too, that helps us when we want to say instead of the, or instead of to, and when we drop the ing off the end of the word, that kind of stuff. It all works towards giving ourselves permission to sound things out more conversationally, as opposed to reading a bunch of words on top of a line of melody. In pop music, most often the words will follow the melody line as well. I think in a lot of cases, the songwriter hears a melody that has a lyric around it already. For most of us, will find what's called the hook in a song first, right? So with The Exile, it was on the banks of the now you've old, gone, whatever, right? So for me, that was the hook. And in my very first song, Slow Water, it was an image where the lyrics and the melody followed the surface of not the surface, I'm sorry, but the undercurrent in a river. The surface is very fast and you get swept away with it. And this is what emotionality can do, and then quiet reflection happens underneath where the sand is soft and the rocks have been worn to softness and stuff like that. So drawing that kind of a metaphor. So a lot of the songs that we do too will have some sort of a metaphor going on in them, like Almost Home, right? As Pam pointed out, it's just, we all understand that. It gives us permission to be the person who wrote that song. Hammer and a Nail I chose because of that overlapping music. The Indigo Girls are famous for doing that. I would have added another one of my favorite songs of theirs called The Girl with the Weight of the World. But I thought, that's getting pretty pointedly political. Basically, it talks about abused women and how we tend to push them aside and not want to deal with the obvious things that are going on in someone's life who is being abused. We tend to shy away from that sort of thing. So it's very sort of prescriptive. Like, let's pay attention to that. So I tend to go for more songs like, Lean on Me, the more obvious, let's help each other out kind of stuff. The song, A Little Bit of Red. Have you all done A Little Bit of Red? Yeah. So that song, to me, it's speaking about depression. And I think she has actually said that too, that what she sees coming is another depression coming on, right? And she's saying, no, back off. I don't want you here. It's not about some lover that she's broken up with. It's about recognizing that she's about to be hit with another depression. And when you read the lyrics with that thought in mind, they make a whole lot more sense. So, One of Us, One Voice. That's another very empowering kind of song. And it also has the image of, we start with one voice and somebody else will join, and then somebody else will join. And when you have that interlocked three-part harmony, especially done by, 30 to 100 women, that's pretty powerful. I found it very powerful just listening to the original artists. I'm having trouble calling up names. But when I heard the original, I thought, this is a very powerful song. So that's one of the things that I go for immediately. Stand By Me, another classic song about let's stay together and help each other through stuff. Wait Until the Sun Comes Up, another beautiful song about hang in there. We know you're hurting, but if you just wait one more day until that sun comes up, you'll feel differently, right? The one I'm doing right now that I'm arranging by Matt Anderson, Drift Away, has the same message. Drift away with your worries and cares. Let's see. That's When I Need a Song. We all did that one this year, right? That one and What the World Needs Now. I originally had just done those two for my three choirs, but then COVID hit. And Nancy and I agreed that it might be a good idea to give all of the choirs a couple of, let's stick this out together. And this is when I need a song, right? So what the world needs now is the kind of love that will see us all helping one another to find a vaccine instead of competing as to who's going to get there first and this sort of stuff. The stuff that's going on in the States is terrifying. But so songs that promote people coming together to work together to make this a better world. Sing, Sing, Sing and Let's Make a Better World There's so many songs that fall into that category. But so on top of the message first being what I look at, then there's the, being able to find three parts to it, and then maybe some responses, oohs and ahs. I remember the first 2 years of choir, everybody in the first year gets Brand New Day. It's like the second song in the rotation, right? And so many of the women, because so many of them have never been in a choir before or never really sung among other people, everybody's like, oh my God, we gotta go, ooh, 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 ooh. And the point I wanted to drive home is that doing that can destroy a song, right? If you're able to put some real emotion behind that ooh, and go, ooh, 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 you can hear the emotion in an ooh. And if you can put emotion behind an ooh or an ah or whatever, a nonverbal line, then that draws emotion out of the person who's listening. The same thing with, when we run our words together, I keep saying, don't bother with the tos, ifs, ands, buts, thes, because the listener's ear will fill that in. You need to put your emphasis on the important words, right? Saw my life this morning, lying at the bottom of a drawer, right? So we don't really hear of a, but we hear bottom of drawer, and our brains go, oh yeah, bottom of a drawer, got it, right? Move on. Peace of mind, that's another favorite one that we do early, because that one helps us to understand the distinction between passion and volume, right? Because you can either go, at last, or you can go, at last. A lot less volume, but lots of passion in there. But also too, peace of mind, it works well to sort of get everybody moving and feeling that sort of gospel feel, right? I mean, this is another thing. I look for songs that make you want to move. Even in a sad song like Landslide. I lost a member once because that song evoked some very serious rift between herself and her daughter, and she couldn't sing it without crying. Even though I said, you've got to keep on trying and get yourself to the point where you can sing it without crying anymore, but that you still feel the emotion. And so these are experimental songs. And of course, I've run into countless troubles with Why We Build the Wall, because too many people found that one too political. And some people just don't understand the concepts of irony and metaphor. I had members who just could not understand that this was not a song in support of building walls. And I said, next year you're going to get another song about building walls, but it's got a nice melody to it, like, some walls are made of stone, sometimes we build our own. It's just as critical about building walls as why we build the wall, but they found the melody and the overall mood of the song too threatening. So I always walk this line too about, I don't want to be doing fluff either, because fluff tends to fly away after a while. It's not interesting anymore. So songs that have some substance to them. So it's a difficult process, I find, trying to weed out this kind of stuff. Donna mentioned the other day, one of her favorites is I've Got the Music in Me, which I too, when I recognized that song, I thought, yeah, it's a disco song, but, it talks about what doing music feels like. Ain't got no troubles in my life, because I'm singing, right? No foolish dreams to make me cry. And it's full of attitude. It's full of non-note songs. No foolish dreams to make me cry. It's the same as at the end of the lines in Come Away With Me. I try to get people to not put a note on Come away with me in the night, right? So, come away with me in the night. Night has a note on it, but come away with me. When you do that, you drag it off into a word as opposed to a note, you're pulling the listener's ear along with you. It has that physical effect of you sort of leaning forward. And then, of course, doing the come away, come away, come away, and then building that with not so much volume as passion. Come away. When you sing with passion, you get more mid-range into your voice anyway, because, you know, the passion is making your face contort to show the emotion, right? Come away, all those layers, which again sort of reinforces that, come with me. And again, if you were to sing, come away with me on a bus, that doesn't sound very romantic, does it? But if you go, come away with me on a bus, you soften the word bus, and it doesn't sound quite so much like a yellow school bus, right? So these are all sort of what they call teachable moments in the songs that we do. And I'm guessing that maybe if we can't go back in rooms together in the fall, that maybe we spend a little more time talking about each new song that we take on, what it might do, what it might encourage us to do, and how we can sing it as best as possible by first understanding, what the message is, and those concepts of the difference between passion and volume. Right? So yeah, peace of mind is one that's passionate, and so is, that's when I need a song. They've all got some sort of passion in them. River of Dreams, that one I chose because it runs a whole lot of words together and is a very interesting breathing exercise, right? In the middle of the night, and you cannot go in the middle of the night because you're going to slow down the tempo. You'll be behind the beat in no time at all, unless you go in the middle of the I'm walking, I go walking in my sleep, right? And I told this story the other day in the technique workshop. I had a wonderful, I don't know if he was tenor or baritone because I don't understand all those differences, but this guy had a tremendous voice and he'd been in musical theater for a very long time. And he came to me to learn how to sing blues, but I could not get him to stop saying baby. And say, no, in blues we say baby, baby, right? And so I said, you need to stop with all this elocution, this diction that you keep. Blues is not about clarity, it's about emotion. So I got frustrated with him at one point. I gave him a pencil. I said, here, stick this between your teeth, and now I want you to sing the whole song and not drop that pencil. And he did it, but then he never came back. So, and I still see him around town. He's a huge music fan. He goes out to every blues gig and lots of jazz and funk and you name it. He's out there. But I think he finally realized that he's meant to be in musical theater, and that's where he's going to stay. And that's fine, because I have opinions on that too. I don't understand why opera singers feel the need to try and sing jazz or blues or pop singers deciding that someday they're going to wake up and sing opera or classical music. They're all very different approaches to music, and the teaching is different. If you're going to go and sing musical theater or classical, yeah, go and see a classical teacher. But if you're going to sing pop music, I had one student who called one time and said, I can't come twice a month. Can I come once a month? And I said, sure, no problem. She came for her first lesson that September, and I said, wait a second. She got about 8 bars into the song. I said, wait a second, who are you going to see? She's like, you can tell? And I said, yes, of course I can tell. Like, who are you going to see? Well, I want to go to Sheridan College in the fall, so I think I need some theater music lessons. I said, that's fine. But the deal is, when you get to my door, you have to drop that outside the door and come in and sing the way I want you to sing. And you're going to find that your classical teacher is going to demand the same thing of you. So unless you want to develop a split personality, perhaps you should make the choice. Your future, you want to go to Sheridan, then I don't have a problem with you dropping me as your teacher, because you want to get in, for one thing, right? So you have to toe the line. I'm trying to think of another. Way Over Yonder was the first song that I decided to put in with tons of layers. Oh, thank you, Phyllis. Yeah, one voice is the Waylon Jennings. Yes. Okay, Way Over Yonder. That song, I mean, the whole Tapestry album is still, I think, one of the best-selling albums of all times. But that particular song appealed to me because on her original version, there's not a whole lot of backup going on. And I thought this song was written for a choir. The same with the new one that I picked up and put in this year of Carole King's called One. I don't know if it's ever been recorded on a CD, but it is on YouTube. Just her at the piano singing this beautiful song that just screams to have a choir doing it, right? So when I listened to Way Over Yonder, I thought, this is where I can see if I can cut my teeth on arranging to put all these different layers in. Because one of the things I learned from a friend who actually did take choral arranging at Queen's University, he was told the way to do a complex arrangement is to just stack a whole bunch of simple parts on one another. So, yeah, he, na, na, ho. That's like 9 parts, right? Yeah. But they're all doing a very simple part. I don't know if any of you have seen the movie Standing in the Shadows of Motown. An amazing movie about Motown music. And you look at this band, there are like 3 guitar players and a couple of bassists and a couple of drummers. But every single one of those musicians is playing a very simple part. A very simple, repetitive part, but they're all different parts. And when you put them all together, that's the gestalt, right? That's the sum of the parts being larger than, but the whole being larger than the sum of its parts. It's quite fascinating to watch because I suggested to the guys in the band that we should do more stuff like that. And the guitar player said, well, I don't want to just go chink, 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 chink through a whole song, right? That's the beauty of it, that where we all join together with our one simple part and know that the layers then are what makes the whole arrangement. And we don't do this often enough, but again, I might encourage the directors to encourage you guys when you're listening, when a song starts to get together and you're not doing the splits anymore. Some of you should walk out front and stand in front of your director and listen to the whole song coming at you. Because we, directors, have absolutely the best spot in the whole room. Because not only are we working towards feeling all of your voices coming out of our mouths at the same time, we're hearing all the parts washing over us. So it's the women in Brockville describe me as the puppet master. Because I do this, and they go, ah, right? And I do this, and they go, ah. And so they're watching my mouth and my hands, and they feel like they're marionettes. But what happens with me is I hear all of that sound. It feels like it's coming out of my mouth. It's a very powerful feeling for the director, I'll tell you that. But if you stand in front of, especially if it's a song that you don't care for so much, when you see it all you hear it all coming together in its parts, you get a very different perspective. So I encourage everybody to do that more often. Just go say, excuse me, Laurel or whoever, Georgette said I should come out front and listen, because it's just a completely different place. And it's amazing. You'll go back with a completely different idea. Of course, a lot of you too, you get the benefit of having some videos posted after your shows. I would love to find a video example done by any one of the choirs for every song we have ever done in our rotation, so that new choir members can go and look up, this is what that song sounds like when it all comes together. So here I go. I'm blathering on and on and on again. I've been going for an hour and 15 minutes and only had one or two interruptions. Questions, I mean, not interruptions. Okay, Donna first, then Pam. Whoop, space bar. Still not hearing you, sorry. I'll hit unmute as well. Try again. You got in there earlier. There you go.
We have the video that we did for our anniversary, right? And it has a whole 2-hour concert on it. I don't know if those can be chopped up into little bits, but
Yes,
it's the
probably
whole thing.
Yeah, they probably
Right?
can. And I do try to video every year. And I know Laurel videos every year. And I think I've seen some of Beth's stuff online. There was someone who stood in for Marion once. So if you go onto YouTube and you type in Shout Sister, there is a lot. But we have like 140 songs now, so that's not going to be my job. Like I said about the warm-up stuff, I don't want to spend time doing that. I would rather find songs and keep arranging and being ahead of the choir. So, but yes, that's something that I'll mention to Shannon, because I think that's going to be her job, is to find videos of every song we've ever done. Pam?
So I have two questions. The first one is, do you consider our audiences when you're selecting songs? And the second is, how did you choose from the myriad of Cohen songs, the ones that you did?
Ooh, two very good questions. Yeah. My first consideration when I choose songs is the women in the choirs, because a great many of us have never been in choirs before. I joined the United Church Choir when I was a kid, and I didn't like the material. So I just, I played my guitar in the girls' bathroom in high school, and I went to parties and sang. So I always try to keep in mind that this choir was designed for us. And initially, I said we wouldn't bother to perform because we were amateurs and we just want to have fun. And there was another choir in town here in Kingston who said, why don't you come and do 3 or 4 songs to open for us? And the women in the choir were kind of nervous about it, but we chose 4 songs. And I said to Andy, the director, I said, we've got 4 songs. If you said 3 or 4, so I'll leave it to you. He said, yeah, do your 4. Well, we did those 4, and at the end of it all, the women were like, oh, that was fun. I want to do that again, right? And so I thought, yeah, okay. And it wasn't a train wreck. We sounded great. And so I thought, yeah, we can perform as long as nobody's nervous about it. And then the second instance that really hammered it home was my Kingston group got invited to sing. I don't know whether Picton and Brockville had been started by then or not, but we sang for Stephen Lewis to raise money on his book tour. And that was very powerful. Everybody poured out of that gig going, we have to raise money. We're now a choir that needs to raise money. So I started what I call the African, where we would bring in, one Tim Hortons worth of money, 1 coffee's worth of money every week, and throw it in there. We raised thousands of dollars for the Stephen Lewis Foundation and for the grandmothers, the Help Lesotho Foundation. And the next thing you know, we're knitting sweaters for the kids in Lesotho, and then we are the first choice of a lot of charitable organizations who are trying to raise money. It's always been the case that musicians are always hit first, Hey, let's do a fundraiser, let's get a band and not pay them. Right? Because everybody assumes that musicians are just born wealthy or something, I don't know. There's a joke that goes, do you hear about the musician that won $1 million? Yeah, he kept on playing until it was all gone. Anyway, so I'm so proud of the fact that we started out as an amateur choir that got so good that we can perform for people. and raise money for worthy causes. So, but yes, and I remember making a wisecrack at the last couple of nursing homes that we went to, saying, you know, you people here are all my parents' age, because my dad's 96. So anybody in their 80s and so on who's in these retirement residences and nursing homes, I said, you guys hated this stuff when I was a teenager, but we're going to sing it for you now. And then we do White Rabbit. And they laugh and they enjoy it because we're doing music for them, right? And I've had so many of these people also say when we go in at Christmas time, oh, we're so glad you're not doing Christmas songs. We're so tired of Christmas songs. But early in the day, too, there was a tendency to want to cater to the audience. And I've always maintained that that's a dangerous thing to do. If you're in a band and you're more worried about getting people on the dance floor and doing Mustang Sally in order to do that, the audience can sniff that lack of self-confidence and they'll push. They'll push you to learn songs that you don't necessarily want to sing. That's why I wrote Let Me Drive. That was my response to being asked umpteen times to sing Mustang Sally, right? So, but when we first started doing the nursing homes and the retirement residences, people were thinking, oh, maybe we should be doing, you know, the wartime songs by Vera Lynn and so on. And I thought, yeah, that is their pop music. It's not necessarily our pop music. So those songs don't hold the same kind of meaning to us that they did to our parents. So I want to find songs that appeal to our generation and younger. I've also been struggling over the years with the idea of doing children's choirs without having to cave to the idea that we have to do Sesame Street songs and the like, right? When I was in kindergarten, I was asked to do What Child Is This for the Christmas pageant. I think, and I did music with youngsters when I lived in London, Ontario. I called it Eurythmics, which tells you where that band got the name from. Eurythmics is just a style of, it's a musical exercise that uses rhythm. And so I had a house full of 5 to 8 year olds with pots and pans and rice in pop cans and sticks and you name it. And the deal was that we would play Follow the Leader through the house. So one kid got to be up front, banging on the pot or whatever, but we had to do this all in time with the music. And kids have such an innate sense of rhythm. You look at a baby sitting up, put some music on, you see that kid bouncing on his or her diaper. They're right in time with the music. Everybody's born with this great sense of rhythm. So yeah, I always think about the choir rather than the audience when we do songs. And I figure the audiences over the years, they'll come to know that we're not an ordinary kind of choir. And that's what I'm finding. When we go to do the Festival of Trees in Picton, there are people who are trying to get in the door because Shout Sister's coming on and they don't want to miss it. And that's been done because we've basically said, here's what we do, like it or leave, right? And so the same thing's happening in the choir. The type of women who are looking for something more rigorous, they don't stay long because the fact that we chat between songs drives them nuts. Within the first few weeks of choir, I had somebody come up to me in Kingston and say, I'm here representing 7 women, and we would like to start on time. We would like more difficult arrangements. We would like no talking between songs. And there was one other thing, and I said, well, first of all, let me say, kudos to you for stepping forward and representing. I won't shoot the messenger, but I would like you to go back now and tell those 7 women that they're in the wrong choir, period. We're doing something different here, and it's radically different. So, yeah, it's all about the women in the choir and not and it comes. So the women who come into the choir to check us out, they'll know pretty quickly whether this is their cup of tea or not. And now what we have is, 1,400 women who are all of the same mindset. We're all there for the same reason. It's as much about the camaraderie as it is about the music, and we just tend to like the same sorts of songs. And we don't always all like all of the songs, but the challenge there is to be an actor and pretend that this is your favorite song for the 3 to 4 minutes that we have to sing it. Because we can't go around assuming that just because we hate a song that the woman standing next to us doesn't love it. And that the one that you love the best, somebody else doesn't hate. So you challenge yourself to step out of, that part of you and just be an actor and sing the song as if it's the only song you ever wanted to sing, right? So now the Cohen selections, that's a really interesting question too, because, well, when it gets down to it, those are just a lot of my personal favorites. And again too, can I put some harmonies behind these ones without making them sound too barbershop? Is there room for oohs? There's generally no room for responses in Cohen's songs. But his melodies, if you get past his voice, his melodies are beautiful. Like that one, If I Didn't Have Your Love, that's off of his last album, and he's not singing that. He's basically reciting it. His voice is very monotone. But I listened past what he was doing to where the chords were going in the song. And this is basically what Jennifer Warnes did on that amazing album, Famous Blue Raincoat. She took a whole bunch, and Emmylou Harris did a gorgeous rendition of the, what did he call it? She calls it the Ballad of the Runaway Horse. It started out with a different title, but again, it was a very long recitation with music behind it when Cohen did it. And Emmylou took it and gave it this beautiful melody, and which made the poetry even more significant, I found. So those are rare instances where an interpreter does a better job than the writer did. And Bonnie Raitt is credited with that too. She only just started writing in the last 15 years maybe or so. She wasn't really known to be a writer. But like Linda Ronstadt, amazing song stylist interpreters. They can get through, they can get past a voice that maybe isn't very pretty and find the nugget in the song that makes it singable by prettier voices. I used to cringe when I heard Jeff Buckley sing Hallelujah, because he's so classically trained that he wouldn't say do ya. He would say do you. I'm going, duh, it doesn't rhyme with hallelujah. Hello, right? This is a very basic element of the song. Anyway, let's see. Let's look. I was going to threaten to get some of you singing today. Does anybody want to suggest what? Yeah, Eleanor? Gotcha.
Probably you've answered this 60,000 times, but I'm really curious about Me and Julio. I love that song. Is it about homosexuality or a little triad?
Well, that's just it. Yeah, I actually read Paul Simon's autobiography, and he talks about that song. Paul Simon is an interesting songwriter because he loves rhythmic lyrics. So he says that Me and Julio really isn't about anything. Everybody wants to say that the radical priest refers to Father Brannigan, I think his name is, in Baltimore, a very radical priest who gets routinely thrown in jail with my favorite social critic, Chris Hedges. So, and somebody pointed out to me in choir one night, she looked up in the Urban Dictionary what the term Queen of Corona means. And apparently in the Urban Dictionary it's referring to fellatio. But if you understand the history of the Urban Dictionary, it wasn't created until long after Me and Julio was written. So this is somebody imposing a different meaning on a lyric that was not intended in the first place. So Me and
But it
Julio,
talks about Rosie, Queen of Corona.
yeah,
And Corona is a neighborhood in
in New York.
New York.
Exactly. Yeah. So to take Rosie as the Queen of Corona and impose some sort of image of a girl giving somebody a blowjob in the schoolyard, I find quite objectionable, right? But it is difficult. I mean, I struggle with this a lot in song choices. There's this whole debate that goes on about separating the art from the artist. I was never so disappointed as when I found out that one of my favorite songstresses, Nina Simone, used to beat the living crap out of her daughter all the time. Broke my heart. And then there's John Mackenzie of the Love and Spoon, not Love and Spoon, Mamas and Papas. Loved their material. He and his daughter had a 10-year incestuous relationship. Lots of people don't know that, right? And I struggle with that because somebody amongst the 1,400 women that we deal with in the choirs is going to point that out to me and say, I object to singing this song. I won't sing this song because this awful person wrote it. Picasso was an asshole, and he produced amazing art. A lot of the classical composers like Liszt and Chopin, all those guys, they were terrible. What do you call them? Hounds. They were dogs. They had their groupies too, right? Just because they're playing classical music doesn't, and I mean, if you read anything about the kind of gospel stuff that goes on in the States, Black Baptist gospel, there's a whole element of sexuality going on in there that we don't hear about. So again, there's the issue of, do we separate the art from the artist? Can we? And then, of course, all these issues about cultural appropriation. In the world of the arts, it's very difficult to not put something out there and expect that somebody's going to pick it up and run with it. Like, we all cover everybody else's songs. Where it gets dicey is if you steal, say, Inuit art. If you're the Hudson's Bay Company and you steal Inuit art and you sell parkas and clothing with these designs on them, and you're making money hand over fist and not sharing it with the people who created it, right? So this is why we have these copyright laws in music. When we do a concert, we have to send a portion of the take at the door into an organization that I'm not completely convinced actually shares it with the original songwriters. They divvy it up amongst everybody, and it always seems to work out that the most famous get the biggest chunk. So, but that's, you know, that's a whole system that needs to be revised at some point. So yeah, that's another element that gets brought into, I don't know, oh yeah, Lorna?
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt if you weren't finished your thought.
No.
I just have a comment and a question too. I was privileged enough to see Hadestown in New York City last September.
So jealous.
Yeah, so it's where the song "The Wall" comes from.
Yeah.
And I was one of those people that was having a difficult time appreciating that song. Although I sang it, it was all fine.
Mm-hmm.
But in context in the play, I really had a new appreciation for the song and the music.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's just a thought to throw out there that sometimes, you know, it maybe doesn't make as much sense, or perhaps something we can relate to as we're singing it. But sometimes from where it comes from, it does make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And even though there was a political twist sort of put on it, right or wrong, in context of the play, it was completely marvelous, and it was absolutely phenomenal. The whole play was fantastic.
Yeah.
But for me personally, it helped a lot to put a little bit of a different, like I said, an appreciation on the song. It was absolutely amazing.
So maybe if that play ever gets put up onto, say, YouTube or a video channel where people can actually see it, it might help. But I was trying to make the point that a song like this works out of that context and into a modern context, and that whole play actually you can put into a contemporary context, right? It's because it's about greed and hoarding and building walls. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
if anyone ever if it comes back to New York and you get a chance to see it, it's completely.
I would kill to see that play. Yeah.
And my question for you, Georgette, is I was always curious about your choice of Because by the Beatles, because in the rotations that I've done so far, I think I came in the 3/4 rotation. It just seemed a little bit different than other things that we sang. It's so calm and it's so quiet. And I just wondered about that choice.
That choice had everything to do with that very difficult passage, because I'm always looking. The thing that amazes me about Shout Sister is that it doesn't seem to matter what I throw at you guys, because you're learning by ear, and once you get the first year or two under your belt, your confidence level comes right up. I can't seem to stump you guys anymore. So a song like that, I'm thinking, oh, we'll be working on this one for months, right? No, you come back and, it's there within a few weeks, just like every other song. And so every song I look at, I'm thinking, okay, is there a skill in here yet that we haven't approached? Like River of Dreams, like fast lyrics, and Me and Julio, fast lyrics, and lots of skipping over stuff, and all of this stuff. I'm thinking, okay, what's the skill that's going on in this song? And I laugh week after week. I bring out a new song, and within 2 or 3 weeks, everybody's got it.
That reminds me of Yes We Can.
Oh, God, yes. Yeah, that song. Thank you, Mary Lou. That's a great reminder. I don't know if any of you have seen this movie, Young at Heart. You might find it on Netflix. Yeah, you've seen it, Kathy? Yeah. It's an amazing movie about a guy he's on the eastern seaboard of the United States somewhere, and he's putting together this rock choir, but he's going into all of the retirement homes to get his choir. So these are people in their 70s and 80s, and he's got them doing songs by The Clash, and they're singing songs like I Want to Be Sedated, and there's a video on YouTube of the big guy. He's in a white suit, and he's got his oxygen tank, and he's dragging it along behind him. He's singing "Staying Alive." Stuff like that. It's hilarious. But the whole movie, there's this one couple, a guy and a woman, who they decide. Well, there's one scene where they go into a prison in Georgia, I believe, a prison full of great big beefy murderers. And they sing Forever Young, and these men are weeping. And so, of course, anybody in the choir sees that one, says, let's do that song. Kathy, got a comment? Spacebar? Are you holding you down? Let me unmute you here. There you go.
Is it good?
Yep.
Great. I remember particularly that film. I saw it at the Ajax Film Circuit a number of years ago. And the director noticed that he picked a lot of the punk songs, and he noticed the common theme of alienation of young people and also elderly, that they sort of, and I just love that.
Yes, very good. And here I was I hadn't thought beyond the possibility that that was just his favorite style of music, right? But yes, it's true. Like, I've never been a huge fan of punk or Metallica, stuff like that. But when you listen to lyrics in all of these songs, they can be very political. They make huge statements.
Yeah.
So yes, we can, just to finish the story for those of you who haven't seen the movie, he's got this, a woman and a man, and they're going to be featured doing this song. And the poor woman can never come in on time with she can't get the yes we can, I know we can, yes we can, if we want to, yes we can, right? And she's constantly stumbling over it. And all of my choirs said, yeah, we should do that song too, because that's a challenge. And so I thought, sure, I like that idea. And we do it. And everybody laughs for a little while because that is a tongue twister. But again, the harder you try to think through something like that, the worse it is. If you relax and go, yes, we can, I know we can, yes, we can, why can't we if we want to, yes, we can, or you just sort of, you go into automatic pilot. And the less you try to concentrate, the easier it gets. I've told other people before too, and I've had instances when I've been on stage and the band starts into a song and I can't think of the first word in the song. And if that happens, none of the other words come. And I'll turn around and say, does anybody know the first line? And the drummer will say, what, there's words to this song? Right? Yeah. So the more relaxed you are, the less stuff gets in the way. And that's sort of the whole premise behind Shout Sister too. We want to be relaxed while we're singing. We don't want to be worried about all the rules that can distract us from putting everything we can into the song, and never mind whether we're, are we holding our chin properly, or our shoulders back, are we breathing from the diaphragm? When you're relaxed, you breathe from your diaphragm. If you ever watch anybody sleeping, their stomachs go up and down. That's breathing from your diaphragm. Anyone who, if you know anything about body language, when a person gets tense, they start to breathe from their lungs. This is something that people who study body language learn. It's one of the few things I've held on to that I know about, only because it relates to me as a singer. But, whoa, when you're relaxed, you breathe from your diaphragm. Interesting. So, God, we're running out of time. We've got 20 minutes left. Any other points? Yes. Marianne in Ottawa. I'll unmute you. Have you got a space bar that you go? There you go. Whoops.
So yeah, I just wanted to know if you'd talk a bit about the choice, one of us, if God was one of us, the context of that song. I love that song. I just wondered where it came from. I haven't looked it up.
Yeah, I love that song too. Thanks for mentioning that one, because that's another song that makes people think. Mm-hmm. Because the point, interpretations can vary widely too, right? But when I listen to that song, I'm hearing the writer say, well, what if the God that we think of isn't some supreme being in heaven, but what if it is the guy sitting next to you on the bus? How do we behave with one another if we don't assume that God, if you believe in God, isn't the person riding next to you on the bus or the subway? So it's a song that encourages us to see all people as divine beings of some sort and behave accordingly. And so, but I felt the need to make a point when I wrote out those lyrics so that people didn't understand that this wasn't some kind of a criticism of religion. It might be, insofar as if we step outside of organized religion and think that if we espouse the notion that all of nature is what is God, in indigenous religion, like they have a creator and there are figures, animal figures and so on, but the whole notion that we are part of nature and it is inextricable, the same thing holds true in our modern society, where we get on the bus and assume that the poor person nodding off next to us might be a drug addict or a loser or whatever, right? It kind of tries to inspire us to see all living beings as divine. Eric Bazillion, the guy who wrote it, he doesn't even give himself that kind of credit. He basically said he wrote it in just a few minutes. He wrote it for a girlfriend, and he didn't really think about it. But the same sort of analysis goes to, like, Bob Dylan. People were constantly trying to parse his music and try to figure out what the meanings were behind stuff. And Bob Dylan basically said, my songs mean whatever you think they mean. I don't know what they mean half the time, right? So, and that's true of the song The Exile that I wrote. I went at it thinking, oh, this is a song about my friend and I shouldn't be saying all this about him. And then I thought, oh, hang on a second. If I step back and use my critical analysis training that I learned in university, I could impose this particular meaning on this song, or I could impose that particular meaning on a song. This is where we get into sort of postmodern thinking where everyone's interpretation is legitimate, which is what I think has led us now to this age of everybody calling everybody else fake news. Mm-hmm. Nobody knows what to believe anymore because we're getting all these different sides. And that's not to say that, like I've always argued too, when I started going to university, there was a book by, I can't remember his last name, but his first name, but his last name was Bloom. And it was a book that was critical about universities at that time having women's studies and black studies and indigenous studies and blah, 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 saying whatever happened to Socrates and Plato, and I always argued, well, whoever said that Socrates and Plato had anything to do with marginalized people? Like, you know, if we're all supposed to learn about Socrates and Plato and it means nothing to your lived experience, shouldn't we be embracing marginalized experiences and writers and so on so that we all learn how to be more inclusive as a people? So, yeah. So songwriters don't necessarily, like I said, Bob Dylan, I said, well, they mean whatever you think they mean. There was a wonderful...
Downey too.
Yes.
Gord Downey as well.
Exactly. And a lot of people find Gord Downey's lyrics absolutely impenetrable when you try to figure out what they mean. But he had this talent for writing lines that clicked. Somehow or other, you're able to memorize them. You know, I know lots of people who sing every word to Gord Downey's music, but have no idea what the songs mean. And then again, you get to interpret it the way you will. I remember reading years ago a wonderful interview, a dual interview. The same interviewer interviewed Bob Dylan and Leonard Cohen and asked them each the question, how long does it take you to write a song? And Bob Dylan said, oh, anywhere from 4 minutes to like 4 days, 4 weeks. And Leonard Cohen said, about 4 years. He says, I start out with about 40 verses and then I start to shape. And, you know, he spent years on every song that he wrote, carefully choosing just the right word, right? But I would argue that Leonard Cohen was way more of a poet than Bob Dylan ever was. Bob Dylan cut his teeth on Woody Guthrie and the folk singers of the time, and it was political music, right? So that's a different approach altogether. Leonard Cohen is way deeper than Bob Dylan, but we love them equally. Neither of them could sing either, interestingly enough, right? But we love their stuff. Same with Neil Young. Not the best voice in the world, but we love his songs. Any other questions? We haven't sung a single song together. I'm always, by the way, too, I'm always happy to get suggestions from people for songs. I'm not shy about writing back and saying, have you ever listened to the verses of We Are Family? You know, the song Hymn to Freedom came to me through the Kingston Choir by one of my favorite women in the low section. She came to me about a dozen years ago and handed me the sheet music for that song. And I looked at her and said, what do you want me to do with that? I can't read music. She said, this is a wonderful song. And it took me 12 years to get around to finding a space where I could think through it and find enough examples on the internet of people actually singing it that I could hear an arrangement that I wanted to do. But, I mean, if someone suggests a song to me, I'm not shy about saying, well, you know, if I can change the lyrics to be more inclusive, I'll do that. Sorry, Eleanor, did you just have a point?
Yeah. Do you know the Weird Sisters? WYRD?
Yes, I haven't heard anything from them in quite a while.
I wonder if there's something in their repertoire that would be good for us.
There may be. Yep. If you, anytime any of you hear something and you think, oh, this would be a good song for the choir, feel free to send it along. You all have my email address now, right? And I have a folder. When I hear something and think, yeah, I'm going to think about that one, I slide it into the folder. There's about 100 songs in there right now, but that doesn't mean I won't get around to it. I'm sorry that it took me 12 years to get around to Hymn to Freedom, because it's a gorgeous, gorgeous song. So yeah, but now after this workshop, you've probably all got a better idea of what I'm looking for in a song. It needs to be catchy. I'll figure out whether there's 3-part harmonies to do. I can hear that instantaneously. But like I said, I tried to do Simon and Garfunkel stuff. You just can't put 3 parts to a lot of it. It's just very interesting. I'm still going to try maybe an Everly Brothers tune or two to see whether or not we can find 3 parts in that. But I mean, there's so much music out there, and there's no way that I can keep apprised of all of it. So I mean, Abby once in a while sends me Coldplay songs. That's not a band that I've ever listened to very much. So I'm reminded now I should sit down and listen to a best of collection of Coldplay, because the few songs that I have listened to, I've gone, well, hang on a second, not a lot of rhyming going on in here, and it's a lot easier to learn a song when there's rhyming going on. So we do He Na Na Ho, but Susan Gluckhardt, my other favorite of hers is OCM.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful song, but there's that one line in there that just makes me go, because it doesn't fit, it doesn't rhyme with anything else, right? But I'll get past that because I like the song well enough. But that kind of stuff too. What's her name? Loudon Wainwright's daughter, Rufus Wainwright's sister. Martha Wainwright. Lovely melodies, very little rhyming going on. So for those of us who already struggle with memory, we don't need to make it even worse by trying to figure out, okay, is this the line that goes here instead of going there and stuff like that. So there's a whole lot of different things coming into play. And just before yeah, Marianne, yeah.
One more thing. So if we've suggested something to you and haven't heard, it's possible you're still working on it, or it might be in that file to be thought about.
Yeah, I think Nancy typically sends out a message saying, I'll forward this to Georgette. She has a folder. Yeah. Yeah. So, and there's nothing wrong with asking, you know, I sent this, did she actually get it? Kind of thing. Yeah. And I just wanted to point out too, before we go, Anna in Northumberland, you and I have exactly the same lamp in the corner of our rooms. That halogen stand lamp, I have that too. It's behind my computer. It's been freaking me out going, am I looking at my walls here? Yeah. So yes, do. And it's because there's such a wealth of music too. I'm sure a lot of you have noticed that there's a little bit of Sly and the Family Stone being snuck in here and there as just references here and there in songs. So this year I got around to doing Everybody's a Star, but I thought it would be fun to do I Am Everyday People as well. You know, there's too much music out there and I don't have enough time to do it all. So,
as long as we don't do Sweet Caroline by Neil Diamond, we're all
oh my God, no, thank you. Thanks for that. Yeah. The one I wouldn't mind doing, though, which is a Neil Diamond song, a Canadian group, the Great Lakes Singers, they did, oh man, it's in my file. Let me see if I can just find it. I can't remember the name of the song. But another Neil Diamond song that, oh, Song Sung Blue. Song Sung Blue. Everybody knows one. Yeah, that's has a lovely melody and nice lyrics, and it's not a hunk of cheese. So yeah, I try to avoid hunks of cheese. So Sweet Caroline is a bit of a cheesy pop tune. It's like we're not going to do bubblegum music, and we've covered the one and only disco song we're ever going to do, which is I Got the Music in Me, right? Eleanor?
There's a Great Lakes singer song that's so erotic in such a positive way. He's comparing her body to a topographical map of Canada. It's so like
Oh, that's clever.
That's the Rockies, and oh, it's unbelievable.
That's clever.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll go looking for that one because seriously, when I lived in London, Ontario, a pair of friends of mine, they were a female duo. They both played guitars, but they were doing I Believe in Miracles. Where are you from? You sexy thing. Right? And I thought, yeah, we could sing that. Why not? Right? Another one that I thought would be fun to do would be Slow Hand. I need a lover with a slow hand. Right? Duh. You know, let's challenge the audience a bit too here, right? Yeah, you put whatever meaning over top of those kinds of lyrics as you want, you know, down in the gutter if you want to, or take it at face value. There's another thing I'd love to point out to people. That's that big hit song. The songwriters vehemently deny this, but there's enough people out there theorizing that song. There she goes again, running through my veins, and I just can't explain the feeling that remains. That's a drug song if there ever was one. And I don't care what the Beatles say about Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. That song sounds to me like it was written while under the influence. And a lot of songs actually are. So there you go. Anybody else got a last hurrah? Anybody thinking, like, I had no idea when I started this one out what it was going to end up being like. I thought we might try to parse more of these songs individually, but I hope I've met expectations, or if not, send me an email, right? Send me an email and say, I thought I was going to get this. So that might help me with going on again later at 7 o'clock. All right, so a pleasure to see you all, and I really hope we can find some way of getting back together, even if we have to stand 10 feet apart with masks on. I want them to say it's okay for us to sing in the same room again. All right, best to all of you. See you later.